country could not be better served than with this most experienced, capable hands than yours, President Biden. He's just perfect. The timing couldn't be better. And Madam Vice President, we're inspired by your work for the people as you continue to be an invaluable partner to President Biden.
I'm worried about families and elderly grandparents and what their lives are at stake. Everyone is a little harder. So, so grandmom can walk out without having, out of her porch without worrying about falling, can take care of herself, can be left alone.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We got a little bit of background music, and it's only because it's free. Didn't cost me a dime.
Didn't cost you a dime.
Now we got some updates to the new program, folks. Good evening. Welcome to the show On Fire. Your host, Brian Smith, along with
Harold Brooks. What's going on?
Brooks. Oh, Daryl. The author of the book, 37 Days.
Yes, disenfranchisement of a Philadelphia poll worker.
All right, absolutely. And before the show, we were talking off air, and yes, I am wearing my walkaway shirt, solidarity for our good friend Brandon Struck. Many prayers for him. He was supposed to go for sentencing today, but it's been put off to tomorrow. And you're like, well,
okay, why is he getting sentenced? What is that all about?
What's going on, man?
Tell us. Walk
Brandon,
away.
For those of you who don't remember, the walkaway movement was a huge movement. I mean, millions of people were sharing their testimonials about a red pill, about how they were awakened by Hillary Clinton really being a completely unqualified individual for just about anything. And seeing the ways, not saying that they supported Donald Trump, but saying that, you know what? This Democrat Party for 50, 60 years has not had my best interest. And even recently, with the addition of AOC and 3, the Democrat Party has really gone full board communist. I mean, that's what they want. They want an Islamic.
I guess who's coming back? 2024.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, don't call like LL Cool J. Don't call it a comeback. She's been here for years.
Oh, is that what it was?
Oh, yeah. Mama said knock you out.
Knock you out. Right. No,
she's coming back 2024. And and they're talking about, another Trump, Hillary Clinton, 2024.
Dude, would that not be crazy?
Yes. Welcome to America.
You always say that.
All this stuff is happening and people need to wake up. Welcome to America. These things are happening right before our eyes. And, we have to wake up and speak out against this. No one wants Hillary Clinton. There's someone, I don't think the far left wants her, that mainstream kind of middle of the road, Democrat. They want, and the powers that be wants Hillary Clinton back. Wall Street wants Hillary Clinton back. The people that control this country and control this earth, wants Hillary Clinton back. Davos,
China,
the great Chinese, China, the Great Reset people, Davos, they want Hillary Clinton back. So we have to do everything we can in our power to speak out, stop it, don't allow this to happen, and get our past president back in the office.
I second that.
Yes.
And for the show today, we got a really big show. We got a very, very special guest, Brigadier General Satterfield. Is that how you pronounce it?
Satterfield. I met him at the gun show. Yes.
Fantastic. He retired in 2014 from the U.S. Army. Brigadier General. Originally entered the United States Army on active duty as a private in 74. And for those of you who don't know military talk, there's enlisted and then there's the officers. Enlisted is the workers. The officers are the higher echelon. So there's the division between the two. And you don't start out as a one. There's no even stripes for that, just an E1. You don't start out as E1 and wind up as a 1-star general, but he did fantastic. Let's bring him on. He can actually tell a little bit more about his past than I probably could.
Brigadier General.
Hi guys, how you doing?
How you doing?
Hey, great. Yes, I did enter as a private, and you're correct. There's no rank, there's no so on, so it's a lot more expensive. So the first stripe you get is actually the next level up, and we call it mosquito wings because it's just simple, a simple stripe. Yes, I made it all the way to Staff Sergeant in the infantry, and after 7 years, I decided to go back to college, complete a degree, get a commission in the infantry as a second lieutenant, and I went from there. When I made captain, I decided it's time to make some small change and in my career path, and I decided to switch over to the engineers. I studied chemical engineering, and I've got a couple degrees out there, and I figured, hey, let me put it to its worth. So I joined the engineers in the Army, and that was the right decision, I think, because that put me on a path to doing some really wonderful things.
What do you think?
Awesome.
What do you think your number one? I don't know how to put this right, but your number one accomplishment or the most favorite thing that you loved to do when you were in? I mean, you served for 40 years.
That's right.
That's amazing. I mean, I was in for 4, but thank you so much for your
service.
I
was in ROTC. Yes, thank you.
Yes, you got to remember, I'm a little bit of a product of my time. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and during that time, I used to watch television shows, and one of them was I was only allowed 30 minutes a day at the most, which was probably a mistake. I shouldn't have been allowed to watch TV at all. But I was allowed to watch one show called Combat with Vic Morrow, and you probably have seen some of those on YouTube. Well, anyway, he was an E5 Infantry Sergeant, World War II, as the show goes. It was a series, lasted only a few years, and he led men into combat. My biggest accomplishment, in my opinion, was to be promoted to E5 Sergeant in the infantry. So that was my favorite one. So yeah, I made other ranks, quite frankly. I didn't know if I could cut it as a sergeant. I thought, wow, man, that's making it, and I made it when I made E5 Sergeant, because it was a big deal. Today it's less of a big deal, but at the time it was a huge deal to make sergeant. I made it. I was very happy about it. I was an infantry sergeant, and I loved working with the folks in the unit. It was an infantry unit, and out of Fort Hood, Texas, and great place to be, by the way. If you're ever in Texas, it's good to get out there occasionally. But I grew up around a lot of World War II and Korean War veterans. They told me a lot about war and that it wasn't glamorous or anything like that. I took that to heart. It makes a difference. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot in the Army. They kept me stable. I would have probably quit the first day if I didn't have good sergeants helping me out.
Yes.
Yeah,
I definitely can.
They scared the crap out of me being that first day in basic combat training out of Fort Polk, Louisiana. Let me tell you, I was scared to death. I was so scared that I wouldn't lie about anything. You just couldn't do it. They asked you a question, you just blurt it out. I mean, that was the way it was. You cleaned your rifle, you made your bed, you made it right, and you were always on time. You did what you were told, and you kept your mouth shut. If you did those things, you're probably in pretty good shape.
Wow. So General Satterfield, what was it like? You have your book out, The Longest Year in Iraq. As a brigadier general, what was it like when you were told that you were going to Iraq, and that first few days in Iraq? What was that like for you?
Well, right. The name of the book is Our Longest Year in Iraq, and I'm referring to the folks that were with me. Just real quick, the reason we called it that was because it was really hard. So every day was very hard and very long. If you put in, we used to joke around. My guys said, "Hey, we've been here 3 months in combat. Hey, can we have a little time off?" And I said, "Sure. I'm going to give you half a day off, and you only have to work 12 hours today." Wow. So yeah, so it was pretty brutal. Engineers don't get time off for that.
Well, it was a different kind of war too, wasn't? I mean, I feel like when I think back, not that it was our first desert war, but I feel like it was.
Well, it was different than, let's say, Desert Storm 1, where it was attack across the desert. Yeah, we did that in the beginning, but after the first few weeks, after the we call it the kinetic side, in other words, the shoot up part of the war was over, the front end of it, it was more settling down into bases, and then into the bases, we called them forward operating bases or combat outposts, depending on the size of them. It But let me go back to the question Daryl asked. He says, "What was it like when you got notified you were going over?" Uh, I mean, that's what I've been trained to do for a long time. Daryl, I don't think that was. I wasn't really shocked. The hardest part was telling my kids that I was
Oh,
going to have to go, and it was going to be about a year and a half because there's a little. They want you to do some intense train up right before that, and so that took a few months. And we were at Fort Sill at that time doing train up, and my commander came in and said, I got to send an advanced crew into Iraq into combat early so you can prep the way for the rest of the unit. An engineer group headquarters, by the way, working at the First Cavalry Division. And I said, man, I'll go. Could Fort Sill is just too barren for me, man. I got to get out here. And a good friend of mine says, hey, it's maybe not a good idea to volunteer to go to war. And I said, hey, look, that's what we're here for. So I went over. It was the right thing to do to get in there early. So I spent a little longer than the rest of my unit did over there in the front end. The thing that I learned very quickly was never make an assumption, because as soon as you make an assumption, the enemy's going to have a vote and they're going to try to kill you. That's all there is to it. And by the way, if you make an assumption, you're wrong almost every single time. And we do that all the time in our lives. We make assumptions about people. Let me tell you, don't do that over there, because you will. Because first of all, it's a very different culture right up front. And by the way, I love the Iraqi culture and the people that are there, except for the bad guys. They'd do anything for you. I had at one point more than 10,000 Iraqis working for me, and subcontracted to do work for me. And it's amazing what you can get done if you got 10,000 people working for you. And these are laborers. I mean, outright laborers.
yeah.
There's almost no overhead with that.
Now I gotta say though, nothing to take away from the local nationals, but as soon as we leave, and ISIS or ISIL, as Obama would say, or the Sudanese or whatever, somebody would come in with guns. It almost seems like that there was no. I want to say the right word without sounding mean, but it seems like there was no backbone. It's like, oh, okay, all right, here you go, guys. We'll walk away. Sorry.
Well, you got to remember that part of Iraq and a large part of the Middle East is based upon tribal identity. And whenever you assign people to groups, let's say, whether it be racial groups, genders, whatever, if you assign them to a group, then by default, you become part of that group. And if the group collapses, you collapse. So
Mhm.
it's not the individual actions like it is in America, where the hero stands up, slays the dragon, gets the girl, runs away, and lives happily ever after. There, it doesn't work that way. That's not their motif. That's not the way they operate. It's the group. So if the group's going to give up, you by yourself are meaningless, because an individuals are just simply not important there. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I worked with a lot of individual Iraqis. I still communicate with Iraqis today regularly. In fact, one of them was was a colonel for Saddam Hussein,
Wow.
and still communicate with him today. Great guy. Has two wives. I never saw the older wife, but I did see the younger wife. And in fact, that's part of the culture. Women, the way women conduct themselves and are perceived in the Middle Eastern culture, specifically in Iraq, is different than you'll find here. There's no doubt about it. I was offered multiple wives while I was there. I had to turn them down
Yeah.
because it's against the military's policy to accept a gift worth more than about, I don't remember at the time, $350 or so. And I said, hey, the wives are worth more than $350, so I can't accept it. Army regulations prevents me to. Now, they were probably 12 or 13 years old. It probably would have been, they probably would have, if that had occurred, of course, no way it would occur, and did not occur for anybody. It would have been great for them. They would have had a life that would have been far better than if they'd have stayed in Iraq. No doubt about it. yeah, but the Iraqi people, if you treat them with some level of respect, and you try to speak the language, which I was awful at, but I could try, and then you were in. They would stand with me and protect me from the really bad guys, and
Hmm.
the bad guys would have to go through them to get to me. Because oftentimes I would go out with only a very small force, and they would be hundreds of them would be in my vicinity, and they wouldn't let anything happen to me because they knew, number one, that I paid them. I
Yeah.
paid them $6. Well, started out at $4 a day, up to about $6 a day for hard labor, but they would do anything for me, and for my men, the engineers, and they loved the engineers because we were building things to make, and you could see what we did. Yes, we blew things up. Yes, engineers do that,
Hey,
but we
sometimes you got.
you sometimes you got it. But we also built things, built bridges, roads, tunnels. We did all sorts of things. Walls are important in Iraq. Keep your neighbor out with a wall.
Hmm.
We strung a lot of concertina wire, the razor wire. We built buildings like abandoned. In my first tour, that's in that book, Our Longest Year in Iraq. And by the way, you can get it on Amazon. Just type the name in, Our Longest War in Iraq.
If you folks,
Um,
real quick, if you look in the description below of the show,
Yeah.
there's the link to his book on Amazon.
yeah, we in the First Cavalry Division, we spent 125 million that went through my shop just to build up primarily the bases that we were at, and we did a lot of the money went to local Iraqis communities that surrounded our bases because you want to have neighbors that are kind to you, and they would come to us if there was a problem. They would come and say, hey, and I was a lieutenant colonel at that time. Hey, sir, you know, you got a problem, and we got some bad guys trying to infiltrate our neighborhood. I said, okay, I'll let the First Cavalry Division guys know, and they would send the combat forces in. And that would be the end of it. So that was good. So I was sort of an intel funnel, if you will, to help the fighters out, and I helped the fighters. That's what I was there for. I was ultimately to make the fighting end of the First Cavalry Division, which is a heavy division, to
Hmm.
kick ass as they need to. And they
So,
did, by the way, a great job. It
so,
was General Corelli was the commander at the time.
so, question: was there any time when you had the fear for your life? There's any situations where you was okay, you saw the trouble, and it may confronted you, and you had to uh, do something to protect yourself or protect your company.
Well, well, the short version is I'm maybe I'm a little crazy, but I was never really fearful of my life per se. Yeah, I can get
Hmm.
startled. You know, if a bomb goes off near me, yeah, that startles you. I mean, if the bullets whiz by the head, yeah, you get startled by that. But I mean, actually fearing, no, because once the shit hits the fan, so to speak,
Right.
you're all in at that point. You don't have time to be scared. A lot of people are scared after the fact, not before the
Hmm.
fact. They're always scared after. Me, it was kind of like, well, that's another day. Next item on the list, I'll just go to that. Yeah, yeah. I won't say that's common, but and by the way, here's something important. Before we went into Iraq, you always wonder, am I going to be the guy who runs from the fight? Am I going to
Mm.
be the one who
Oh, no.
abandons his
Wow.
battle buddies in the fight? Am I going to be that guy? Because I read about it in I read a lot about the Civil War, World War II, and it happens. Am I going to be the guy who is a coward? Fortunately,
Hmm.
none of us were, so that was not a problem. But I'll tell you that's something you got to ask yourself. Are you going to be the guy who turns out to be the yellow belly who abandons everybody, who betrays all your buddies standing beside? Because that's why you fight ultimately. In a fight, you're not fighting for the United States. If you're in the middle of a real knockdown, drag out fight, you're fighting for the guy to your left and your right. You're not fighting for
Hmm.
some higher ideal. You're fighting for
Hmm.
survival at that point. And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
To throw this out there, just because the day and age that we live in right now, and I'm not saying any of us are old, but let me tell you, when we talk about what's going on nowadays, I feel like I'm in a whole nother world. And maybe I am a bit old school, but when you're in the trenches, um, isn't it kind of weird to have a woman there?
Well, we don't call them trenches anymore.
Right. Well, I mean,
I'll call it the foxhole.
yeah, the fox. Well, yeah. I mean,
The foxhole.
what culture does that? What culture does that and says, yeah, my women are going out to the foxhole?
Well, yeah, and we call it fighting positions today, technically, but I still like the term foxhole. Well, we didn't fight from foxholes. We didn't fight from trenches. We've actually, the majority of the fighting took place from vehicles, in and around vehicles. So typically we would be attacked in a convoy. So it was a fight around vehicles, typically in a very urbanized environment, not like downtown New York City, but a very urban, where you have buildings on your left and your right, and then you have an avenue going down the center. That's where the fighting took place, and typically it was no more than 2 stories, 3 stories at the maximum height. Yeah, but you got to remember that the engineers, and I say it in my book, the engineers were pretty much left alone in the beginning because they knew who we were. Now that's a long story. I won't get into that. Into how they knew we were out. That's another issue completely, because
You mean the bad guys or the local nationals?
The bad guys knew we were out, and they would leave the engineers alone because they knew we employed Iraqis in vast numbers, and we were putting money into the economy, and they liked that. They liked that a lot. So they pretty much would leave us alone. If I was mixed in with another convoy, yeah, we would be attacked probably. But as a single convoy of engineers, rarely would get attacked, and they were very small. As you know, in combat, you pick on the weakest link. You always do that. And we would travel maybe with 6 or 7 vehicles, and that was very small. No tanks, no overhead cover with Cobras or anything like that. No attack helicopters or anything like that. And yet we were just almost never attacked. It just didn't happen because they leave us alone. They left us alone because they knew wherever we were going, good things were happening. And
the infrastructure. I mean, you guys were building stuff.
Heavy into the building and fixing things. If we blew a lot of the bridges up when we originally came in. The Air Force, aren't they great guys? They were blowing things up.
I know. That's what we do.
I know. I said that for you, Brian. They really did a great job blowing things up. And so we would go in and fix them. So now people could go where they wanted to go.
Oh, wow.
But you got to also remember, most of the 1st Cavalry Division was in Baghdad and about 50 miles surrounding Baghdad. And that's a heavy urban environment. And in that environment, if you fix the infrastructure, people look up to you. They're like, wow. They respected engineers. They called them Mohandas. Mohandas is Arabic for engineers. They highly respected engineers. And at the time, on the collar of our uniforms was a castle. And the Iraqis learned early on that if you saw a castle on the shoulder, that was an engineer, and they respected us for that. And I would just go up to Iraqis, and let's say the Iraqi military guarding something, and I would say Mohandas, point to my collar, and they were like,
Come on in. Wow.
But they would not let others in. They would not let others with me. If they were with me, they could come in. But if they didn't have that castle on the shoulder, they were not allowed in. It's just the way it was. But again, that was Baghdad. Go ahead, Daryl.
Oh, okay. Oh, so General Satterfield, you graduated from you had 2 master's degrees, U.S. Army War College. You graduated. What kind of studying? I mean, who was your heroes, and what types of books that you had to read? I mean, what shaped your thought while you were in the War College, and who was your heroes?
Well, that would take a long time to explain. So you got to remember, go back. I grew up watching the television shows. Alvin York, classic. Knew about it. It's an old movie. Saw it. I mean, growing up, I could name the big generals of World War II. Patton, Rommel, MacArthur, Eisenhower. Montgomery, Bradley, Marshall. All those guys. I can name all those guys still well. But I could just as easily name the New York Yankees. Everybody from Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, all those folks. I could name them as a kid. The baseball taught me how to have heart in the game. The military taught me the technical end of leadership, and you got to have both in order to succeed. And that's why I say I say it in the book. I say it to everybody. I talk about it. I have a blog on leadership, and I talk about it. I call it eating with the privates. In other words, if you're an officer, especially a senior officer, you want to go in and sit down with those that are the E1s, the lowest rank, the privates, the seamen, the sailors. You want to sit down and talk to them, because guess what they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you the blunt truth about what's happening. And it was important for me to get that understanding, because I was trying to help the warfighter. And guess who was the guy kicking in the door? Was that private. That's who that was. And I got to talk to a large number. And I was like, always like, boy, this is great talking to these guys. I mean, people think that's a bunch of BS. Let me tell you, it's true. I would walk out at lunch every time I had lunch where I could do that, which was about 3 or 4 days a week. It was a fantastic experience. And I would bring that information back, and then it would filter down from on high in the first, from the 4-star general to the 2-star to the one, to the, all the way down and get to my unit. And I go, yeah, I know about that for 2 or 3 days. And they were like, how'd you know that stuff? And I go, well, what can I tell you? You just got to go talk to the right people. But it wasn't anybody senior. I found out about it a lot sooner than other people found out about stuff. And that's what I liked about that. I love, but network, they call it networking. I don't like that. I don't like that word, because it seems so formal. But I will tell you, you got to know people to get things done. That's all there was to it. You had to know,
for sure.
You had to know the right people. To me, that's not politics. That's just being smart.
Right.
In other words, you would go to meet. The first day I was on the ground, the second person I met was the money guy from the 1st Cavalry Division. What do engineers do? They build a lot of stuff, and guess what it takes to build a lot of stuff? It takes a lot of money.
Takes a lot of money.
He goes,
wow.
Engineers never come to see me. And I go, I'm here, man.
Yeah.
Goes, one day
I need some money.
and I'm going to say, hey, I need $10 million tomorrow, and I need you to fork it over when I ask for it. And you're going to see my face, and you're going to know exactly who I am. And so when I call you for $10 million or whatever it was, then you're going to go, yeah, I know that guy. Give him the money. He'll make it work. I don't want a 2 or 3 day delay, because when I was told by General Corelli or whoever it was to build something or to fix something, he didn't want to wait a week. As an excuse, because I was trying to round up the money to get it done. That just didn't cut it. Or the materials, or the labor. I could turn around 10,000 people on one job and have them working on another the same day. And it happened. Wow. I would do that, like during the surge in my second tour, and at the end of 2006, beginning of 07, I turned around 8,000 Iraqis working on a project and started working on surge buildings. On the same day. I was just told as a warning order, not an order to make something happen, but just a warning, this is coming. And I had them working that same day. And then I think it was like a week later, the full order came down. And I go, I already got a week's work on this already done. And they go, well, where'd you get the money? And I said, well, I called my buddy over who was the money guy. And at the time, the money guy for 3 Corps is out of Hood. We call it Multinational Corps Iraq at the time. And I said, I need a lot of money. He goes, how much money you need? I go, well, I'm not really sure. Nobody's done this kind of stuff before. So I'm going to guess $100 million. And he goes, wow, that sounds like a crap load of money. How about I make it 150? And I go, hey, you got me. I don't know. The guy eventually made 1-star general, by the way. And he goes, anyway, it turned out the ultimate cost was $55 billion instead of $50 million.
Wow.
So it turned out to be a lot. So we underestimated. Nobody ever complained that, but I'll tell you that you got to start somewhere. But that phone call to this guy was I need $100 million.
So it was like priming the pump.
Yeah, and he told me at the time, and I remember this is 06, at the end of 06, this is right after General Bush announced the surge. He goes, I can get you $100 million, but you have to wait. And I said, how long? He goes, well, it's going to take me about 24 hours to get it. I said, okay.
Can you call him up now? Let's call him up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go ahead, wire that to my PayPal account
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
buddy.
it's not gonna,
PayPal,
exactly. It's not something that you can easily do. I can't even call my favorite banker and get that much money today.
No.
But yeah, it was a lot of money and a lot of work, and there were long days. I don't care how you count it. It was very long days, very dangerous. And when the weather gets hot and it starts getting hot around April, when things start to get hot and our vehicles in the beginning were not air conditioned, then it can be very brutal. And the canals were plugged up in a lot of areas, and they had a lot of problem canals. You got to remember, it's the desert, and the canals are the lifelines, the rivers and the canals, and a lot of them were stagnant, smelled very badly, and it assaults the nose, so to speak. Very different way of looking at things. And but once you kind of get into the understanding of the culture, understanding the people, learning how they work, then you can do. It's amazing what you can get done. And the same thing with the U.S. forces. I worked with. We were controlling all the engineer forces, all the American engineer forces. And when I was there the first time, second time I was there, it was all engineer forces of all nations. But the first time it was just first cav engineers, and they were fantastic. If I wanted something done today, they were there today. They didn't give me any gruff at all. They were there, and that's what I love.
That's awesome. That's definitely awesome.
They would do anything to help you out. But it's not fun, but it's not something you wanted to do, but it's something you could get done. And there was a lot of satisfaction among the engineers. I had a private one time. I was walking up over a bridge, and this private, he was actually it happened a couple times, but one was a Marine, and he wasn't wearing his stripe on his uniform. And I said, hey, I can't walk by an error. You don't have your proper rank on. He goes, well, sir, I got to tell you, I got busted, down to E1.
Oh, no, no.
And so I'm not wearing. I said, okay. I said, here's the deal. And I was Lieutenant Colonel. I said, here's the deal. I said, you let me know when you're getting promoted to E2, where they pin the stripe on, and I'll be there for you. He goes, really? Would you do that sort of thing? I said, sure. I don't have a problem doing it. And sure enough, yep, I went there. So I'm making. I said, by the way, I said, if you ever want to switch over to be an Army engineer, I can make it happen for you. He goes, oh, no, sir. I'm a Marine.
I
said,
oh, man.
Goes, you engineers, you guys just work too damn hard. So I can't do that. So I said, okay. But this guy later on was part of the attack into the Second Battle of Fallujah, where he and his buddies prevented suicide trucks from coming in and blowing up a compound that had just been taken over by the Marines, and saved the lives of probably a couple dozen Marines. This guy actually jumped in a truck of a suicide bomber. And by the way, the suicide bombers always have what they call dead sticks. In other words, when you kill them, their hand loosens and it sets the bomb off. And he jumps in the truck and grabs the dead stick from the suicide bomber and saves the day. This is the same private that I went to. And I didn't know what was happening at the time. Obviously, I was on the outskirts of Fallujah when it occurred, helping with the Navy Seabees doing pushing at that point in time. So, hey, let me tell you, you never know who you're going to run into. This kid was a hero.
Man, I was thinking, I was like, man, he just missed the opportunity of a lifetime. No, he was where he needed to be when he needed to be. God bless him.
Yep.
Wow.
God bless the Marines. Yep, they were great.
So one of the things I had talked to you about, talked to you on the phone a few days ago about the current administration, the current crisis. There's a couple of questions that we wanted to talk to you about. Also, what do you think about what happened in Afghanistan, and what was that like? I know you were out of the military. But what was that like watching Afghanistan and that whole wild situation there?
Well, let me tell you where I come from. I'm a patriot, American patriot, period. And the reason for the military's being is to protect the American citizen, period. That's their job. They're not policemen, but what they do is they They are created to fight wars. Anything at all that detracts from that mission is a problem. Afghanistan had been going on since before the Iraq War, as you remember.
Yeah.
And I personally never went there. They kept sending me back to Iraq over and over because once you're there once, they just like, well, you know the place, we're sending you back, so you're more effective. And but I had a lot of friends that were in Afghanistan all the way up to the very end. And I will tell you that I was disgusted by what happened. Anybody that gives an excuse for that failure at the end to pull everybody out, not notify the Allies, abandon Americans on the ground, civilians, and to get an additional number, 13, I believe, soldiers and at least one sailor, I can't remember the number, but to get them killed was totally unnecessary. It was a tactical error, obviously, and that's what most people focus on. But I'll tell you, strategically, at the higher level, it was a supreme error because people now know that you cannot trust the United States military to stay.
Now, let me ask you, I honestly, I cannot believe that this was Biden's decision.
There was a movement to withdraw the troops from Afghanistan. There were talks already underway.
Right.
There was no official timeline to make that happen. In fact, it was what we call conditions based. In other words, certain things had to happen before we would withdraw. Now, you could say that was a mistake. We can argue that, and I get you're right. We can argue that. I disagree that we should have come out of Afghanistan. I'll be blunt about it. I don't think we should have. I mean, heck, we're still in Germany, by the way.
Right.
Okay, and in South Korea.
Yeah.
Okay, go figure. I think we should have stayed, but that's neither here nor there. The president makes the decision, but the president also has an obligation to several things. He has an obligation to the American people. He has an obligation to the military and to our allies. And those allies, we have written agreements about certain things you do and you do not do. He violated the written agreements between us and our allies. And diplomatically, we stumbled because our mission over there did not tell the other diplomats that we were coming out. So I got a whole issue with the withdrawal. It was a tactical failure of the worst kind. And if you hear Donald Trump talk about it, he all the time talks about that tactical failure. I hear a lot of people and I read a lot of conservatives that talk about that tactical failure. I got that. But I'm personally more concerned about the strategic failure. We will feel the effects of that withdrawal for the next 100 years. And in fact, when we originally went into Afghanistan, I say we, not me, because I wasn't there. The bad guys were using British infields from the 1800s. That's how far back.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
They've got the most modern weaponry, and we're going to see these weapons killing Americans and others, innocents throughout the world for at least the next 100 years. And I don't care how you look at it. That's a big problem.
They could literally put together a handful of troops, because they're literally troops now, and go take over whole cities in an instant.
Oh, certainly. You know, I will tell you that the Taliban overall, I mean, they had a great game plan. We didn't know it because the enemy always has a vote, and they had a great game plan. And our game plan was to get out. And that's not a good game plan. That's just Doug Satterfield talking. That's just the way I am. I'm pretty blunt about it. It was the worst U.S. military action ever to occur in the history of the United States. Period.
As you say that we should have stayed. Just so everybody knows, I was stationed on an air base that's still there. It was set up after World War II. In Italy, northern part of Italy, and it was referred to as a retirement base. The real small kind of, it's at the base of Piancavallo, a nice ski resort at the top of the mountains. And during Desert Storm, they dumped all the troops there because that was a perfect base to then launch into where you guys were hanging out at. And we got there and there was no room on base, so everybody got an apartment. but I digress. No, but we're still there in Aviano. As you said, we're still there. The largest air base in Europe is Ramstein, Germany. It's still there.
Yeah.
We're in England. I think we're just about everywhere, are we not?
The United States has soldiers currently, troops, I should be more clear, troops in about 100 countries today.
And it would be nice to be paid by those other countries. Just saying.
Right. We could talk about that, but the payoff, and some of them we only have small numbers, but the payoff to America is wonderful because they learn about the culture. They learn, hopefully, they learn that we are not corrupt, that if we say we will do something, we will do something. And I've worked with allies of all kinds. In fact, somewhere around in my office here, somewhere I've got a nice little flag signed by, you know how it is. You leave a place and they sign a flag for you, put the picture on it. And, you know, in about 8 different languages they've signed. You know, hey, congratulations. I worked with allies personally from 30 nations. Now, when we were over there were a lot more, but I just worked with 30 of them. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a language barrier. There's a culture barrier. They fight differently. The rules for them to fight are different than our rules. We had more freedom of movement, not enough in my opinion, but we had more freedom of movement than any other military, except maybe the Iraqis, which had almost total freedom, which made sense. But I tell you, if you work with them, you try to speak their language, you respect them a little bit, they'll do anything from it. I even worked with the Italians. Okay, so for your air base, and they, by the way, they were very pretty.
Beautiful. And I'm gonna tell you, anybody who said that French was the language of love never heard an Italian woman speak. I swear to you.
Yes, in fact, I'm married to an Italian woman.
God bless.
Yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
Yes. So one of the questions that was asked to me, you know, want to talk about the state of our military and able to deal with crisis that's happening all around the world that possibly could happen. I mean, you have Russia, what could be invading another country. You have China
right now.
Ukraine. So you have China. That's possibility will go into Taiwan. If Russia go in Ukraine, definitely the Chinese government will definitely go into Taiwan. What does that look like? I mean, well, we all idea maybe what it looks like, but let's talk about American forces. Are we ready for something like that to happen? What do you think could happen as a retired general, brigadier general?
Well, first of all, as you know, I'm not in charge of foreign policy, so it's only an opinion of a civilian.
That's opinion. You earned it.
Yeah. Ultimately, you remember what I said about the U.S. military. Our job is to protect the American citizen. And sometimes you do that indirectly. That's why we have soldiers, sailors, Marines in about 100 countries in the world today. And I visited, not that anywhere close to that number, but all through Central South America. I've been to almost every country there, visiting troops there. So you got to remember, that's ultimately what it's about. But if you weaken the U.S. military, and it has been weakened, there's no doubt about it. It seems like if you're not in a war, then we get weaker. And that's what's happening. And when I say weaker, I don't mean technologically. I don't mean fewer tanks. I don't mean any of that. But if you look at the people who were in the military, the fighting force, not the support element, and I was part of the support element. But if you look at the fighting forces, the question is, are they less capable of protecting the United States and the United States interest? And I think we're certainly headed in that direction. Absolutely. And leadership to the side, is the average Marine or Air Force pilot or fighting soldier in the infantry or the armor, can they fight if put to the test? The short answer is, I think so. I question their leadership a little bit. I'm not concerned about the private. I know, I have lunch with them. I'm concerned about the senior leadership and their ability to do their job. Absolutely, I'm concerned about that. And can they? If it was up to the Secretary of Defense or to the to Mark Milley, the general out in the Pentagon, which I avoided with everything in my fiber, then we're going to lose if that's the case. But I think Lloyd Austin as a Sec Def has made a very poor Secretary of Defense. He comes across as a pussy, and I never knew the guy personally. I have to tell you, I read his bio.
On fire, you're on fire, General.
Yeah, it looked pretty good, but he's a wimp, and so is Mark Milley. Mark Milley's the worst, if you ask me. He's the absolute worst of all of them. He needs to go. He needs to resign today. The U.S. has lost. The average American citizen has lost a lot of respect in the United States military. In fact, if you go online, you can find all sorts of polls. We have dropped. I don't know. The United States military used to rank among the highest of all social institutions in the United States. That is no longer well, I don't know where we are ranked with everybody else, but we've dropped dramatically in terms of how people see the United States military. Is it a woke military? The senior leaders are woke. There's no doubt about it. And all of them that are woke need to be immediately terminated.
And I had this in the notes to bring this up to you, specifically the Air Force. I left in 97. And when you think about it, 97, I mean, what, 25 years ago? I mean, it doesn't seem like that long ago. But from then until now, the Air Force is allowing certain military personnel excuses to grow a beard because that's part of their religion, to wear a turban or headgear because that's part of their religion. They're now all of a sudden they're now starting to talk about allowing people to use. I still can't get with this. Maybe somebody can help me, but the theys, the thems, the the
transgender.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I know Islam, and the religion itself it's got some problems that it needs to deal with. But when they look at us and they see that the Air Force, specifically what I'm talking about, because I don't know about the other branches, but they see that women marry women and they get paid for it, and men marry men and they get paid for it. A foreign fighting force, whether it be China, Russia, or Islam, is going to look at that and be like, "What are they doing?"
Welcome to America.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember they've always considered us decadent. I mean, that's a fact of life, and I don't think the perception there is going to change. As far as wearing a beard, if you're in the Air Force or the Army, let's say, I don't care as long as you're capable of doing your job, and I'll explain that because you got to remember sailors used to be able to wear beards. That was not an issue. There were restrictions on it. True, the Army and the Marines probably should not go there for the simple reason you got to wear a protective mask, and it doesn't work with facial hair.
Right.
That's why you got
Well, we got outfitted with Kim Warfare gear. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, guess who's going to be the first die? I mean, the idea that you're going to be slammed with chemical weapons probably pretty low. So I don't care. As long as the military does it in the right way and they do it respectfully, I don't really care. But as long as their primary focus is protecting Americans and America's interest, then fine. We're good.
Okay, what about the wokeness now?
Yeah. However, every person in the military needs to be capable of going to war. Period. So if you got a beard, you're going to go to war. Okay, you can go to war. But if you're transgender and you're taking hormones, guess what? You cannot go to war. And the United States military should discriminate against it. And I'll tell you why. The U.S. military discriminates all the time. Yeah. They don't discriminate based on race. They discriminate based upon IQ. You got to have a minimum of 83 IQ. Most people don't realize that. Get below 83, you can't really do too much in the world. You can't even be a good grunt in the Marines at 82 IQ. I mean, you just can't do it. So they discriminate based on that. So there's an educational requirement. There's also, if you have a criminal background, you cannot join United States military. So if you're dumb and if you have an IQ of 83, below 83, if you have a criminal background, or if you're too fat, I'll be blunt about it. If you're well overweight, you cannot join the military.
And they're kicking people out of the Air Force. They're too fat too.
Yeah. In fact, today, roughly 3 out of 4 people between the ages of 18 and 24 are ineligible to join the United States military.
Wow.
Cannot join the United States military because of one of those three reasons. And usually it's a combination of the two.
That seems pretty high. It didn't seem like it used to be that high. That seems higher than normal.
Yeah, but you got to remember, it's not World War II time where they took anybody that could see out at least one eye. But it's true, because there was a lot of folks going to that one. But again, you got to remember, what's the purpose of the United States military? And by the way, if you have diabetes, you're out. When I was actually going at Fort Sill, they were giving us our annual, they redid our physicals when we were going through there in my first tour. They do it every time you go. And part of it's a blood test and all that. They found, my unit was 79 people. They found 5 people in my unit had diabetes. They were discharged and sent out of the military right there. We had.
Did they know they? Did they know they had?
Didn't even know it. They didn't even know it.
Because sometimes, like when we were in, a couple of folks had not told the truth about stuff that the military always finds out, and when they found out, then they kicked them out. You're saying this? You develop it while you're in. You test.
You're out.
You go.
Wow. In those cases, some had cardiac issues because it was a headquarters unit. So you got older people meaning people into their 30s and 40s. They're out. Hey, what can I tell you? Did they get compensation? I don't know, but they weren't in my unit anymore. They were removed from the military. They took them out of our unit. They put in new people in their positions, and we went from there. Hey, I could have had diabetes and I'd have been done. I don't control that. But the United States military is a young man, young woman's game. That's all there is to it. And if you're not young, well, like me, they kicked me out when I was 62. It was an age thing. Right. Once you hit a certain age, you're gone. It's discrimination, and call it ageism, call it whatever you want. They do it all the time. Why? Because the United States military has a singular mission to protect the United States and its interest. And once you get outside that interest, then now you got a problem. If you start accepting people who cannot go to war, then you got a problem. It's not the same as accepting a communist into the United States military. I got another issue with that one, which they do that, by the way.
It doesn't make any sense.
But if you come into the military, if you come into the military without arms, they're going to tell you, no, you can't come in. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have your arm blown off while you're there, they'll let you stay in. Yeah. They just simply assign you to other positions.
Now, what was the cutoff date on entering? I know the Air Force, I think it's like 28. Like you can't be older than 28 to go into the Air Force.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, that changes all the time based on demand. And it differs between enlisted and officer. It also differs.
Well, yeah, an officer, you have to have at least a 4-year degree, you go through officer training, so you're going to be a little bit older.
Yes, so they do, right, and they all vary. You look it up on the internet. Typically, that's what it is.
The Googles.
And even then they make exceptions. For example, if you're a medical doctor and you're 45 years old and you want to join the U.S. Army, guess what? They're going to take you. Okay, there you go. All right. Does that make so? They do make exceptions.
Avoid all liabilities as a doctor.
I was standing in line to, I forget where it is, Fort Bliss, getting ready to head over on my second tour, and I see this first cav guy. You can tell because he's wearing a patch on the first cavalry patch, and I go, "Hey, where'd you get that first cavalry division patch?" I thought he might have been with me the first tour. He goes, "Oh, I got that in Vietnam." Vietnam.
Holy hell!
And I go, wow. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm a medical doctor." And I go, "Whoop, that explains it, But they'll keep those guys, and they pay them a lot extra. They will keep those guys in because they need them. If you're a medical doctor, why would you want to join the Army and get low pay? You're not going to do that. There are some that will because they do get paid more than average, engineer that's on the battlefield that doesn't have anywhere close to their ability. But they love doing the military stuff, and so they'll keep them in. So yeah, they do make exceptions. But as far as the age, hey, if you're going to join the military, I recommend you do it quickly. If the younger you are, the better it is. You simply have the ability to have a greater impact on your life if you do it while you're young. If you do it while you're older, it's not as good.
Tell us. Okay.
I was going to say, last question, real quick before we were off air, as we were getting ready to come on. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but we brought up, because it's now hitting the news here recently, that Hillary Rodham Clinton is apparently, at least CNN op-ed piece, said that she's making possible comeback for 2024.
Don't call it a comeback.
that's the American way. You know, and by
Yeah,
the
welcome
way,
to America.
yeah. And by the way, she is qualified to run. Does she have the leadership ability? My opinion, she doesn't. Obviously, I wouldn't vote for her, but I'll tell you, it would be entertaining to see her run against Trump. Yes, it would. I think that would be the entertainment event of the year. I do think, however, unfortunately, that it would drive a lot of people who are the extreme leftists over the edge. Which, you know, if there's videos that you guys ever see them going over the edge, you know, that's entertaining. I only allow myself so much entertainment a day, but I think I would be tapped out with a Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump run. That would be fabulous.
Yeah, I'll definitely be definitely fabulous. And I want to say, you know, Brigadier General Satterfield, you know, if there ever hell is ever broken loose in America, you know, I'm calling you. And, you know, we go. I'll come by your side and hang out with you. You. I'm sure you and some other ones.
Hey,
You know,
Daryl,
y'all have a plan. Yeah.
I'll have my AR-15, and I
right.
don't have 50 rounds of ammunition.
Don't need it.
Okay.
Don't need 50. I never buy anything less than 1,000 rounds at a time.
No,
You
that's
always
something
gotta have more ammunition than you. Hey, if you know,
Get a deal on
hang out with
volume.
you.
you gotta know your weaknesses. But my rule is always carry a gun and more ammunition than you'll ever need. That's just my rule. You know, you just
Well, I'm
gotta
coming to
have
hang out with you. I'm coming to hang out with you.
so I got. Hey,
You
and
know,
thanks, guys. By the way, thanks for plugging my book. I appreciate it. Our
Absolutely.
Longest Journey Rock.
Hey, definitely.
Yeah, you'll learn behind this. It's not a blood and guts. I'll be upfront with you. So if you're looking for that, it's not there. But it's more behind the scenes, the crazy things that go on. And I'm not talking the funny things necessarily, but the crazy things that go on in war. You'll get to read a lot about it, and you'll get an awareness that you've never thought possible of a combat in Iraq or anywhere else.
All right.
So thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. We have definitely learned a lot from you, and you're welcome to come on anytime. I guess you'll be our, you know, everybody has these consultants that come on, the military consultants, and you'll be our modified consultant. Come on, talk about what's happening in military. Okay, thank you for coming on.
You got it, Daryl and
All right.
Brian. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
God bless.
Man, what an incredible interview. I could have talked to him for hours.
Yes.
I could have talked to him for hours. How fantastic.
He's been on it. Listen, he's on the On Fire show, and that's one of the exciting things about the On Fire show. We can get these great guests, and he is someone that he has a wealth of information about the military, and you know, he was there. He was on duty, his first hands, you know, going in Iraq. He understands how to deal with certain things, and he was there. Right. You know, to have someone like him, a brigadier general, to come on the On Fire show, it's just powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, he has literally spent an entire lifetime, 40 years in the military, an entire lifetime of that, and all facets of it around the world, just absolutely fantastic.
When all hell
building
breaks
and the,
you know, we going to his house.
Right. The building, the creating, the engineering aspect of it. What an awesome. I mean, if there ever was a job, I had no idea. I'm sure it's probably somewhere in the Air Force, but I was in the machine shop world where we really did. Somebody bring us something in 5 pieces and say, hey, this used to be 1 piece. Can you make another one? And so we just figure it out and make it happen. And I love that kind of stuff. And that's really in demand, as he was saying. Yeah. When you join the military, you've gotta have a little something there.
Yeah, I was in ROTC and I didn't get a chance to join it. I was going to go in as an E3 in the military, and because I was in ROTC for 3 years, and you know, but I just said nah. If I couldn't fly jets, they looked at me. You was how tall are you? I'm 6'5". You know, I want to fly jets.
No, that ain't happening. No,
I can't. If I can't bomb you from the sky, I ain't going no hand-to-hand combat.
Well, but
you know,
you also need you need a 4-year degree. That's what it was. If you wanted to be a pilot, because I really dreamed of that, you had to have a 4-year degree and then enter into the school before you were 28. I think that's what it was. And I missed that cutoff. That wasn't even close.
And I was like, yeah, and I was like 18, 19. You know, I was going during the first war in Iraq,
Oh, Papa Bush.
and Papa Bush, yeah, yeah. You know, and the Navy wanted me, the Army, the Marines, and the Air Force, and I was going to go in the Navy because I saw the Kings Bay Naval Base, but I decided, you know what, it just wasn't for me because I got my uniform taken 3 times from my commander. You don't deserve to have that
Yeah.
uniform.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
said, nah, I can imagine something going wrong.
Yeah.
But,
And the stories, the way that he talked about his troops too.
Yeah.
That's the leadership that we really truly need. That people,
Yeah.
the young ones that are coming in, can look up to that and say, "Wow, okay, yeah."
And he's still a leader. I mean,
right? They'll work for
he's
you.
a consultant. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, fantastic, man. Oh,
yeah.
we're over our hour limit.
Okay. Peace, everybody.
Yeah, I'll leave everybody with
On fire.
Yeah, reporter asked Joe Biden if he's mentally capable. I'll leave you with this last clip video
Sleepy
of the
Joe.
week. Yeah,
Sleepy
Sleepy Joe. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you next Thursday.
Peace. On fire.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this honor. James Rosen with Newsmax. I'd like to raise a delicate subject, but with utmost respect for your life accomplishments and the high office you hold. A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult found 49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit. Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement.
Well, I'll let you all make the judgment whether they're correct.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
the question I have for you, sir, if you'd let me finish, is why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea.